day and welcome to another big edition of the RDFNL Footy Show. Thanks to our friends at ONTIME Delivery Solutions. My name's Yeendy. I'm sitting with the reigning, defending, Unsung Hero Award winner, Tara Murray from the Star Weekly. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic weekend we had in football, and we did have our grand finalists decided, and the Boroughs in the senior footy, they are well and truly on their way and up and about into another grand final with Riddell. It
wasn't an easy match against the Cats on the weekend, but we've got a grand final that we had a couple of years ago, which produced one of the all-time greats in the RDFNL grand finals, where we went to extra time. So if we could see another one like that and another cracker season, but obviously it'll be tough for the Boroughs to back up after a really hard-fought win against the Cats in the preliminary final.
They certainly had to do it the hard way because they were up by plenty at half-time, and the Cats machine kicked into gear and they hit the front late in the last quarter before the Boroughs put them away to win by a handful of points.
Look, it was 37 points at half-time, so I think the Boroughs were thinking, yep, we're playing some good football, we're looking on track. The Cats were pretty disappointed. I think they got a little bit of a rev at half-time from Ben Tankard, and then he just threw the magnets around. He threw the ball around, they had nothing to lose. So for them, they put Jason Cook deep, isolated Jason Cook. Casey Somerville played unchanged in the middle for the rest of the game. They brought Jordan Watkins up onto the wing, and he was basically told, don't worry about defending, just run attackingly. And they moved Daniel Markworth forward as well, and all those changes worked. And speaking with Jamie Lobb, he said they sort of came out a little bit flat-footed after half-time, and it could have been quite easily that the Cats were in front at three-quarter time. Ben said he didn't think they took the most of their opportunities in the third quarter. If they had have done that, they could have led at three-quarter time. But in the end, the Boroughs were still leading heading into the final quarter, and the Cats got a little bit of momentum. They hit the front, and before the Boroughs hit back with 2 goals of their own. The Cats did get one late, and then the siren went not long after that. So in the end, I think it was the Boroughs kicked 3 goals straight in that final quarter to the Cats 3 goals 4. The Cats kicked one of them and used most of their opportunities. They could have quite easily won and been through to another grand final.
Do you think the Boroughs would have been surprised themselves when they went into the rooms at half-time and seen that they actually kept the Cats to 1 goal and a half of preliminary final footy?
I think probably a little bit, but at the same time, the Boroughs know what football they can play. We have seen that they have been...
They're very good defensively.
They have, and they've been at the top end of this competition for a number of years. Every single year I've covered them, I think they've made at least the semi, if not a prelim final, if I'm correct. And they've played in several grand finals. So we know what they can do, and they came out with a focus of being able to restrict Macedon early, because Macedon has been a fast starter the last 2 weeks against Wallan and Rupertswood. So they came out with a plan to stop that, and it worked really well.
So that's fantastic. It certainly gives the Boroughs a little bit more confidence heading into the weekend's grand final. Speaking of confidence, I know their reserves bounced back beautifully on the weekend, and I mean, we look at sides that have been dominating throughout the year. The way Diggers Rest have played their reserves has been absolutely amazing, but they had that stumbling block in Wallan. I think their only defeats this year have been at the hands of the Pies. They had to go around the long way, the Boroughs, but they were able to have a big win over the Bombers on the weekend to get into another grand final.
And it looks about the depth that you've got with the Boroughs. They got their top side got 2 or 3 players back into there, like your Jesse Flannery, your Cole Laurie, and your Stuart Clark, and that flowed on to the reserves. And the reserves played Rupertswood in the preliminary final, and it was a pretty even match for 3 quarters before the Boroughs kicked 4 goals to none in that last quarter. Mick Kelsey kicked 6, so he'll be putting his hand up for a grand final spot if a couple of those guys in doubt for the seniors do miss out through injury. So you've got a few there, and it looks like they didn't. They thought they've been a strong side for the last few years, and they're back in another grand final, and they were the minor premier, and as you said, they did lose to Wallan, and you've got Wallan who were the runners-up last year in last year's grand final. So you've got a couple of sides that have been up in the mix in the reserves. They've been in the mix in all 3 grades, these sides, and their depth is showing. And
in the under 19 and a halves, we do have the Rupertswood Wallan grand final matchup again, but with the Sharks having, I guess they've been playing some pretty top-notch footy, and it's fantastic to see how they've been going about it.
Look, obviously these two, it's sort of the grand final everyone expected. It's a grand final we had 12 months ago as well. So the Sharks, I think, maybe surprised a few people to get across Wallan in that first final, considering they played each other in the final round of the season, and the Magpies were quite convincing on that day. So the Magpies have had to come around the long way, and they played Riddell in the preliminary final, and they were in front all day. They were never dominant, and in the end the margin was 20 points, and it's just sort of showed the gap between the two sides. It wasn't a big margin. They couldn't get the blowout, but they got the job done, and they're through to a second straight grand final, and they're looking to defend that premiership.
And I think you look at Wallan too, like Diggers, they were probably the standout side in their respective competitions, and it's probably fitting that that they have made the grand final as well, particularly given how dominant they were. I saw Wallan and Rupo I umpired that game in round 18, and it was kind of a surprise on how one-sided it was in the second half. I thought this just really doesn't feel like a battle between first and second, because Wallan are just that slick of it. Then they play each other the first week of the finals, and it's a different story. So Wallan, full hats off to them. They've had a few things to deal with off the field that sort of contributed to where they are, but I'll tell you what, it's shaping up to be a pretty good match on the weekend.
Look, I think it's credit to both their sides. You obviously mentioned Rupertswood. They're a side you can never count out in the 19s. They're playing in their sixth grand final in a row. They've won 3 of them. That first one they did lose was by a point as well. So it's only that last year to Wallan is the one sort of it has been the big loss within grand finals. So I think it's going to be a cracker of the grand final. And you look, it's the best 2 teams in the competition in that age group, and I think it's a fitting grand final.
Absolutely. We'll touch on that a little bit later in the week, but that is all we've got for our footy wrap up from the weekend. Thanks to our friends at ONTIME Delivery Solutions. Thanks to you, Tara, for jumping on board, and we'll catch you next week to give insights on who we think will win the grand finals.
Thanks for having me.